classes where I've been walking through this one of the arrays problems. And this also allows you guys to use the video, and you can go back and pause it at certain parts. If you're having trouble with the coding parts, you can pause the video and adjust your coding for that as well. Okay, so this video will be up on the website later today. Okay, so let's go back to take a look at where we started. You guys chose this arrays problem as one of the ones you'd like to do together. And we started by reading through what it says in my description of it, picking out some of the important things. So I'm going to go over those again, that we dealt with image files in a specific order. And that helped when we got to the coding, that knowing those image files were in order and that they were grouped in that order helped us to write the code. Okay. We use the link right on the document to go to my website and download those graphics files. And then one of the things I helped to sort of get you guys set up for this was that we were going to use some parallel arrays. So a series of arrays, one for the value, one for the type of array, one for the suits, and even one for the image files themselves. So to make those 4 arrays, values, types, suits, and images, would be beneficial down the road when we go to display the actual card, which we're going to do today. Okay. So I also said that maybe we could use global variables, but what we ended up using, rather than just some of the stuff that I presented here, these sort of examples of the code you could use, what we ended up doing was going to GitHub, and I'll show you again how we did that. We went to the 30S help page. And it's in that help page that we had help from both the arrays unit, but also previously in the methods unit. There was some sample code that I've put out there for people to use that is basically the same code as we went over in the example and that I taught you when we sort of learned about arrays. But then I've added a few more methods, right? Methods that could come up as you program with arrays. So we ended up grabbing all those methods. All those different methods. So from methods like start and end and yes, no, and input and output, and even some of these little reusable global properties like the title, but also fonts and colors, which was something a little more graphical that we incorporated in the arrays example. So all of those were reused, and then we ended up writing a couple of methods to help solve this problem. So when we looked at how this problem was going to work, how it had the sort of, different graphics and stuff like that, and how the output was going to be a little bit fancier than just a standard output, that it's going to have this fancy input, fancy output that involved changing fonts, and obviously it was also going to have an image in it. That this was, in fact, something that we would if we were going to tackle this problem, which is the one you guys chose, that we would need to be able to do this. We would need to be able to have images and have fonts as part of this little fancy output, okay, and fancy input, okay, because the input dialog boxes as well would be fancy, okay? So it was by using that code that we realized this actually wasn't going to be that difficult, because as we went and wrote the method called program, and we actually started to get input from our user, we were able to use a method that was already incorporating a bit of a fancier style of text and formatting the area. And that code was already done for us. So that was good. Okay. So that was us starting to write this method called program. So I'm just sort of stopping here right now. Again, for those of you who might be later following this on the video, you could pause this right now and use that code. But let's go back to our planning. So then in planning the methods that we're going to incorporate with these arrays, I ended up drawing a rough sketch of some of the methods we'd use. So we'd make this one called shuffle, we'd make this one called display, and as of yesterday, I cleaned that up and also realized we made one called set, which sets a card in motion. So in doing this, I can now scroll down and show you how we worked yesterday. So yesterday we created this method shuffle. Here's part of it right here, okay? And in shuffle, we realized that we would be using a series of loops, 4 loops, one for each suit, one that goes from 1 to 13, one that goes from 14 to 26, one that goes from 27 to 39, and one that goes from 40 to 52, where we would adjust our math a little bit for the card number value. We would add the images into the arrays, and then we would jump to another method called set, which we worked on yesterday. And what set would do was, based on the card index value in the array, it would also check what type of card was this. So if it was a card 1, it was an ace. If it was card 11, it was a jack, etc. So we ended up writing set, and I've been pausing on this so you could pause that screen. And really what the set method was just a big if-else if statement, and adjusted the values inside the arrays. What we're left with today is our final method to display a card. So this is where we're at today, is we're going to be writing a method to display the actual card. All right, so let's get down to business and wrap this up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check if it is the back of the card or quit. Those were 2 options that the user could input as a user. They could input that they want to see the back of the card or they want to quit. So in other words, if user input dot equals, ignoring upper and lower case, because that just makes it easier for the user, the letter Q. Because if they hit the letter Q, then we're going to quit, which just means I'm going to call my end method. Because the end method, as it shows in the comment here, just shuts down the application and it says goodbye at the end. So that's perfect. That's how I'll end this program. So if you're inputted the letter Q, this is inside the display method, then I will quit this program. Now I'm going to also bring in an else if. Else if the user input equals, ignoring the case, B for the back of the card. Because if you remember, that was one of the things they could do. I kind of laid it out, and that was to make it a little more challenging, that they could enter a number for one of the actual cards, but B for the back of the deck. So the way I'm going to incorporate that is I'm going to turn the user input into the number that represents the back of the deck, which is number 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that string into a string that represents 0. Because now I can do another check. I'm going to check if the input is a number. There is an input that they could put in that doesn't make sense. I don't know if I had that in the sample code here. I guess I didn't. But what if they typed in like a letter like G or H? That's not a Q, and that's not a B, and it's not a number. So I want to know, is this thing they entered a number? And luckily, there actually already is a method I created to do this called isInteger. What this method does is it checks the value to see if it contains any of the numerical characters or a negative sign, because an integer could be negative. So is it an integer is one of the methods we copied over, okay? So it's not one you have to write. It's already there for you. And believe it or not, this method uses arrays. So it's a nice little method that's already using arrays to do the logic here. So if, not title, but if the user input equals true, that it is in fact an integer, then that's what I'm going to move on to next. Is this number an integer? Because if it's not an integer, okay, so I'm going to have an else here. I'm just going to output, sorry, I don't understand. Because they're entering something that I don't understand. And I'm actually going to put that piece of code to the test right now. So before I go and write any more code inside of here, this is my display method as it is right now. Okay. I check to see if it's the back of the card or quit. Then I'm going to check to see if the number is an integer, and if it's not, okay, then I'm going to say I don't understand. And I'm going to see if I can actually test that with my program right now. My computer's a little sluggish running all this software, so let's see what happens. So I pour myself a coffee here this morning. Okay, so welcome to Card Game Simulator. So if I hit Q, it's going to quit. But if I enter something ridiculous in here, like cat, cat isn't B, cat isn't Q, and it isn't a number. So it's going to say I don't understand. But it's come back to this, right? Another thing. Stand. Even leaving it blank has already been taken care of. But if I hit Q, it quits. So that still works. So this is working the way I wanted it to work. So now I'm inside of here. Okay. I now realize that it is a number. Okay. So it's passed the test. It is a number. Okay. If I want to convert it to a number variable, because I need to use that for my arrays. So int index. So it's a number variable for the arrays equals integer dot parse int of the user input. This is code we learned all the way back in the first unit. I'm converting a string into an integer. Okay. But now there's another potential error here. What if the number they entered is a number, but it's a number like 100? That's not a number inside my array. So I want to make sure the number is inside the parallel arrays. In other words, it's in the deck of cards, right? You're not asking for a number that's outside the deck of cards. So I could easily write this if statement as like if index is greater than or equal to 0, okay? Because it can't be a negative number. I could write that the index is less than the one of the arrays, let's say the array of images, length of that array. But I would need both of those to be true, right? It has to be both of them at the same time. Do I incorporate an else if? Do I incorporate or? There are lots of ways you could do it, but I've actually also made a method for this called in range. This in range method, the way it works is it checks to make sure a number is inside the range between low and high. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say an index between 0 and images.length. If that equals true, then this number index is inside the range. Now, what if it's not inside the range? Well, why don't I output something like that number is not in the deck. And I can test that, right? I can test to make sure that that number is not inside the deck, right? So I'm going to put that to the test here in a second as well, okay? If that little piece of error checking also kind of works a little better, okay? Okay, so let's test that piece of my error checking right now. All right, here we go. So I'm going to try and enter a number that's outside the range, like 100. That number is not in the deck. Okay, good. But if I entered a number like 52, that should be in the deck, or 15. Notice it's not doing anything yet because that part of the if statement I haven't written yet, which I'm about to do. So I'm at the final stage right here. I'm going to finally display the card. Okay. Display that card by, I'm going to build up all the information. The user in dialog. Okay. So I'm going to build up all the information. So I'm going to make a string of text. Something. And then I will later output the text and the image. Okay. So actually, instead of calling it text, why don't I call it information? That's what it is. I'm going to output the information and that image, which I haven't dealt with yet. So yes, I'll be outputting information. That won't include the image yet, right? So I'm, for example, in this string, going to put things like card to display. That index. That's the card I want to display. So just to test that before I finish this up, I'm going to run that and say, okay, I want it 15. So it will be displaying card 15. I haven't done that yet, but at least that worked, right? And my error checking still works, but okay. So that's the card I'm going to display. And if I go back here, that's going to look a lot like what it shows right here, card to display. But I am going to also, in addition to that, put a little tab character right there. So it'll space it out a little bit better. Okay. And then after this, after index, I'm going to attach a new line character at the end. So I'm going to attach a tab character and a new line character. The reason I'm putting in a new line character is now I'm going to take information and I'm going to add information to it. So you might remember this is shorthand for information equals information plus, and now I'm going to add the card value. Also with a tab, okay? Now what am I going to attach there? Well, I'm going to attach what's in my array of values at that index spot. Then I'm going to attach another new line character, okay? So my information is getting added on there nicely. And I'm a little bit close to the edge here, but that's okay. I'm going a little past the line. I think that's probably okay. Okay, that's the values, and that's getting pulled out of the array where all the values are stored. And then I'm just going to do that for the other things, the type and the suit, card type and the card suit. And it's going to come from a different array, types. And it's going to come from suits. Okay. And I won't need a new line at the very end of that. I don't need a new line there. But I needed these new lines here. So I'm just putting some extra spaces in there to kind of lay it out there. That this will now be all the information I want to display. So I'm going to run this to see if it works. Okay. So let's just try card 1. Okay, so it's displaying a 1, value 1, it's the ace of spades. That's right. My tabs are a little off. So I'm going to add another tab, this one, and this one. Things spaced out a little better. Oops, should delete the quote. There we go. Let's try that again. This time I'll try 52. 52. Okay, that lines up nicely. 52, it's worth 10, it's the king of diamonds. Let's try, say, 16. Okay, that looks good. Let's try 13. So it's displaying the information properly. Now I need to add the image. Well, the image is stored also in an array. So although I can use this version of output, just below it in the code I copied over is a version of output that also uses the name of the image to display. Automatically makes an icon and displays that icon, okay, so I don't need to do any work here. To display the image, I'm just going to use another version of output and put in there images at this index location. So now it outputs both the information and the image all at once. And let's see if we got this sucker done. Let's try card 1. Why, look at that. It's the ace of spades. Let's try card 52. Look at that, king of diamonds. How about card 11, 10? How about card 50? Everything looks to be the way we would expect it. Playing that number card, it figures out its value, what type of card it is, and what suit it comes from. This is a simulator now that could be built into a much more complicated card game with a little bit of work, okay? But it's the basis of this kind of coming together. So I'm zooming back because I wanted to have this available for you guys as a way you could pause the video at this point, and this would be all the code for display. I know that's a little small, so I'm going to zoom in on it here in a second, but this will complete the card game simulator. So you could do that right there. And now I'm just going to slowly scroll through. Here's display, the first part, and here's the second part of that method. Okay, and that's now all the methods and all the code for that programming problem. Okay, guys, so I'm going to say goodbye now to you guys. I'm going to stay on Teams if you need me for anything. I'm available on Teams, but if not, have a great weekend. I'm going to see you guys back online on Monday for attendance. And on Monday, we'll take stock of where we are in this unit. You'll now have at least one erase problem done, or at least working on it. And we'll talk about the quiz. Maybe we should cancel the quiz. Maybe we should still do the quiz. We'll talk about the positives and negatives, because your first thought might be, yeah, let's cancel the quiz. But then you only have the 2 quizzes, right, to count your mark on. And it might be better to spread your mark out across 3 quizzes. So maybe we should do the quiz, but not necessarily right away. Maybe we should wait a little while. What is this tutorial you're going to do? What about the end of the course? What's left? All those questions, let's start addressing those on Monday, because it's Friday. And I wanted you guys to finish this up today and have a good weekend. However, there is one more thing. It is Friday after all. So if you guys want, it's time for the bad joke of the week. Bad jokes of the week are by definition bad, not funny, not good, not repeated, not explained. So if you don't like it, get it or hear it. It's not my fault. And you have the right to accept or reject it. But since we're on remote learning, if you reject it, you might as well just log out right now or mute your speakers, because here it comes. Did you guys hear that 2 car antennas, an antenna on one car and an antenna on another car, they fell in love? They had a whirlwind romance. These 2 car antennas fell in love and they got married. It was beautiful, okay? It was a really nice ceremony, but the reception was amazing. All right, everybody, that's it. Let's stop the video now. So I will put